Ghost Cult Magazine welcomes in the great, and I mean great, Andy Dowling of Lord and the Andy Social Podcast. How are you doing, my friend?
Yeah, very good. Thanks for having me.
I'm so glad you're here. Like as I said offline, I had tried to arrange this a few times, and now finally we landed you.
Yeah.
Super stoked to talk to you. You have a brand new covers album out. You are busy doing a million things. You do what I do. You have a podcast and you interview artists and people, interesting people, big and small, underground and mainstream, all over the world. You're involved in a lot of things, but mainly people know you from Lord and the podcast. And yeah, man, how are you? How I hope obviously we're 13 months into this global crisis and psychotic collective breakdown. And I just like to start a lot of these interviews by just making sure, people have lost lives, not just our incomes and our way of life as musicians and people on the periphery of the music industry, but, your family, your friends, your bandmates, their family, their friends. I hope everybody's okay as much as you could be after all this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the immediate circles, everyone's very lucky and fortunate that we're all okay. And there's certainly been, as you said, a lot of devastation in a number of different ways, whether it be people's direct health or their livelihoods, just everything being thrown upside down. But I think where we are in this part of the world, in the grand scheme of things, we've done pretty well. We're very fortunate. So thanks for checking in.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, like, let's not also forget that it's just a few months into the pandemic. Australia was burned to a crisp. I'm not even trying to make a joke, but like the wildfires were a frightening thing. I just moved to California, so I haven't had it yet, but it's coming apparently, where we've had like years of dry seasons. And I live in the north of the state near the San Francisco area where they happen a lot, the statewide, and they all around the globe. These things are happening more and more frequently, not just because people are careless and stuff, but because of the environment. So like you see like horrifying, sad photos of koalas burned on their fur, and you don't want anything to happen. Even though they're apparently very ornery guys, they're adorable, which makes people want to like hug them. But they're also like they sleep 22 hours a day and they kick ass. Apparently, the other two.
They do. They maximize that time awake for sure. But
really
just really quickly, yeah, you're right. Like we came out of like the biggest bushfires in, I don't know, at least 100 years, or at least since they've been recorded, and burnt a large chunk of the country, and I think it was like 1 billion animals had perished. And we overall we were lucky as people, but certainly were devastated. And then what's just recently happened is that we've had severe floods as well. So we've had towns evacuated and all sorts of devastation. So we've had fires, floods, and pandemics, and it's just been absolutely insane. So in some ways we're very fortunate when it comes to the pandemic, because we haven't been impacted like the United States and other parts of the world, but we have had our fair share of other like just chaos. So but we're doing well, touch wood, that we're at the moment we're pretty good.
Right on. I have often heard from other artists that, oh, it's like Australia is great, the fans are ravenous, and the festivals and the shows are awesome, they're always sold out, but it's like 5 major cities and they're all like 8 to 10 hours apart, more or less, maybe sometimes even a flight apart. And
Yep.
In a way that's suited you guys. Sort of the music world has come back a little bit down that way. And I'm anxious to know, when do you think you and the guys will be able to maybe book a show or book shows and tours and maybe play a festival? Because I guess they're starting to sprout up now.
Yeah, it's only just been in the last few weeks that in the state that I live in, so I live in Sydney, and we're in a state called New South Wales, and the laws have just relaxed a little bit more, where we're allowed to actually stand up at shows. So we had shows, but everyone had to be seated. So it was kind of good if it was like a nice acoustic, chilled out sort of vibe going on from a music perspective. But if you're playing metal, oh man, that's a tough one. You're trying to get the crowd all energized, and everyone's sitting down drinking beers, going like just trying to do the horns and whatever, and it's just a weird vibe. But we can stand up now, which is a big plus. And I think for the most part we're getting closer to getting back to normal capacity in venues as well. And so I'm seeing a lot of our peers and friends that are starting to book shows and do tours around the country. And you're right, to come here and play, we've got major cities, and they are about 10 odd hours apart, and most of the time it makes sense just to fly rather than drive. But what we've started to do, and I've been encouraging a lot of my friends as well who can do it, is there's a lot of sort of middle-sized towns that sit in between the major cities, and to really just hit the road, because a lot of these places have been neglected for years. And I think there's a real opportunity to do what many people have been doing for decades in North America, where you go from one side of the coast to the other and you hit every little nook and cranny. And I think we can do that in this country. I think we just sort of use the excuse of the vastness of our country as a reason just to do 3, 4, 5 shows on a tour, when there are a lot of places and a lot of people that would really be keen for live music. So I'm predicting a bit of a resurgence in just Australian live entertainment and live music. And there's a lot of bands who they're very optimistic and very excited about hitting the road. When it comes to us, we weren't planning to play this year at all, because we just sort of wrote off the year. We just thought, let's play it safe. We can't really go outside of the country, which was originally going to be the next steps for us. But even just looking internally within Australia, we thought, let's just let everybody else hit the road first. We'll suss it out. We'll use everybody else's guinea pigs and see what works and what doesn't, and then we'll follow suit afterwards. But the success of this covers album in the last week or so has certainly been changing the conversation within our camp. So we're like, oh, maybe we should look at playing some shows sometime soon. So nothing confirmed yet, but I reckon it's back in the conversation. So maybe something before the year's out, we'll hit the road again.
Awesome. I hope so, my friend. And I love this record. First of all, obviously, being a sort of thrashy heavy metal band, a little bit of touch of power metal, you guys can touch a lot of bases. But personally, I like the covers that are not metal the most, or not metal adjacent, let's say.
Sure.
Your own personal vocal turn on Cutting Crews, I Just Died in Your Arms Tonight, which is one of the best banging pop songs ever. From
agreed.
The 80s, great song. And but a lot of stuff, Ex Japan is in there, sort of deep cut Aha song, not quite a hit song, not the big ones. So really well chosen, really thoughtful, wonderfully played. Message in a Bottle has been covered a lot by The Police. You guys did your own thing on it, definitely. So I wanted to just kind of like, every band kind of starts as a cover band. So like, obviously covers, you've done some live. There's like 27, 30 songs on here. This is nuts.
There's a lot. Yeah, it's I think covers have been a really important part of the band. As you said, like a lot of bands start out before you even have the ability to write your own music. You want to get your chops up and learn how to play together as a band. So you pick your favorite songs. And so I guess it's similar origins for us, but over the years, it's been quite interesting looking back and seeing sort of the origin stories around why we picked particular songs or why we chose to record in general. And some of it's just been for the pure thrill and just amusing ourselves and going, hey, that'd be fun to cover and just for a laugh and see if it's something that comes out reasonably well. Other times it's been to test studio equipment before we go in and record an album. So before we go in and record, the last full length was Fallen Idols. Before we went in there, just to test everything out, we just smashed out a cover just to see if it, if the drums are set up properly, the levels are right, we've got the right gear. And just to get our sounds all sort of sounding as good as they possibly can. So we've used them for a number of different purposes along the way, and yes, live as well. So they're always a good crowd pleaser. They're low-hanging fruit, I call covers, and they certainly get the crowd pretty excited. So for us with this covers album, you're right, there's like 20 plus songs on there. There's so many, and we just thought, especially with the last 12 months, with the world just being turned upside down, we thought. And I think a lot of bands are starting to do this now, where we just sort of went back through the archives and just thought, what can we do to keep everything moving? Because we can't do the traditional things at the moment. So from a covers point of view, we had so many sitting in different places because they're always used as bonus tracks for different releases around the world. And the sort of the casual fan couldn't access everything very easily. So we thought, let's do a compilation, let's get them all together. And we'll record a couple of new ones as well, just to keep things fresh. And so here we are. And so we've got this gigantic release of cover songs, and we've maybe mistakenly called it Volume 1, which has really set the precedent. But we'll play that one by ear. But it's been a lot of fun.
You're on the hook now for Volume 2, pal. You are screwed, right. Rightly screwed. You did it to yourself. I was going to ask, Volume 1 indicates multiple volumes, but I'm really having a great time with it. It's a lot of fun. And of course, if you love Lord and you love heavy metal and you love thrash, you have Metallica, you have Pantera with a great cut off of Cowboys from Hell, you have an Anthrax song, you have Priest, you have the classics. Halloween,
Yeah.
I think, is in there. So like,
Yeah.
you have to bow down to the masters also. But nothing really very typical. Yeah, I mentioned Message in a Bottle, but and Aha gets covered a lot for some reason by rock and metal bands. Just because I just think Take on Me is probably so fun and iconic from that era. Great video, great song, but not a lot of stuff people have done to death, which is what I like. It's like, oh, it's almost like hearing it the first time. You definitely, there are some covers that you're very faithful to, and others is like, we're gonna have the Police cover. We're just gonna have fun with this. We're gonna make it metal, or at least rock, if not quite, almost heavy metal. If you can have like that kind of arpeggiating, clean riff, I wonder what Andy Summers would think of that, because like, he's a guy who didn't like a lot of, he used to poo-poo a lot of heavy metal. And Sting was like, I was a punk. I love heavy metal.
I mean, so with the songs, I mean, I don't know if it was intentional as far as picking the deeper cuts or the ones that are not as regularly covered. I mean, obviously, as you said, Message in a Bottle is definitely the exception. And I think the decision-making process with picking some of these songs has been, I think, just come from a place where we're such music fans. Like we grew up obsessed with music. We all collected music. We were all hanging out in record stores as kids. And purely, I think, as a result of that and being so obsessed about it, we appreciated all of the deep cuts. It wasn't about the hits. It was about sort of, getting excited with your friends and going through those songs that are often forgotten about or not always, the singles or anything like that. So we just naturally gravitated towards them. So when it came to, like Maiden, you sort of go, oh, what songs can we cover? And you could do all the typical Iron Maiden songs that are always in their sets every year for the past 20, 30, 40 years. But, like for me, my second all-time favorite album is Fear of the Dark, which a lot of people poo-poo on, just to use your statement. And I love that album. And there's so many classic parts of that album. And so we thought, let's pick Judas Be My Guide. And that's an underrated classic. It's something that the true purists love. And that certainly has tickled the right spot with a lot of Maiden fans in particular. But it's certainly been, for us, it's a natural thing. We're just going for the songs that we love, and we usually get obsessed about the songs that often people forget about. And then with Message in the Bottle, I think it was Tim. And I think Tim had always thought about doing a cover of that at some point in time, but he just had it in his head and never bothered to do anything. And so when it came time to record that, I think he just wanted to get it out of his system. I think he had it in his head for way too long, and he'd heard quite a few other renditions of it. I think even after listening to the other bands covering that song, I think he sort of thought, well, I like bits and pieces of what everyone's done, but I reckon I can do it in this particular way that he's got in his head that hadn't been replicated yet. So, but it purely comes from just an absolute thrill of just loving songs and just recording them. So, yeah.
Right on. I mentioned earlier your own vocal prowess. For a band that puts a lot of premium on great singing and melody, it was really cool to see everybody kind of take a turn a little bit as a singer.
Yeah.
Almost. And really cool. What was, for you personally, you're not, typically a lead singer on a pretty well-known song, any preparation going in? Did you practice a lot? Did you spend a lot of time with the track? Did you just go in and go for it?
I think there was a little bit of practice beforehand, just because I started to get a little bit nervous. I was a bit cocky to begin with, thinking, oh yeah, it should be fairly straightforward. And then a few days out, I thought, oh, okay, shit, I better start doing some homework beforehand. But that song, it's quite funny because I think Tim in our band's always had the vision of really sharing the roles in the band, and kind of like I think Kiss takes it to an extreme where everyone in the band has had their song or their songs, and they get up to the mic and they sing their songs, and they're known for that. And I think we sort of really enjoy that sort of concept, and we haven't quite translated that to originals yet. But from a cover perspective, we certainly tried this. So we've done some studio stuff where all of us in the band have attempted to sing songs just to test vocal mics and just test levels and things like that. And when it came to Cutting Crew, the original plan was that Tim was going to sing it. And he went in and just did a few takes, and he just goes, oh, this doesn't sound right. It doesn't, like, his vocal versus the original, they don't match up. And he just couldn't work out a way to sing it and give it the justice that it deserved. So he just said to me, he goes, "Do you want to give it a go?" And I just thought, "Oh, okay." I've no idea how this is going to turn out. And as you said, I'm definitely not a vocalist. I'm not a lead vocalist. I'm never sung in a band or anything like that. We just do backing vocals in our band. And I think with that big sort of disclaimer, I think it's come out all right. I think it sounds okay, you know. So I think we haven't blasphemized it too much, and people seem to enjoy it. So yeah, but we might do some more in the future. So one thing that my parents continue to punish me about is they keep asking me, when am I going to sing on another song again? Because they just keep playing that song on repeat. So at least I get the approval from the parents. So thanks, mum and dad.
There you go. There you go. At the end of the day, that's what matters.
Yeah.
I will say that it is not an easy song to sing, and not to mention in rock music and maybe a lot in pop music, that slide, that's the thing that people like remember. It's memorable because it's called a glissando in classical music. Like it's a slide, basically a complete range slide from top to bottom, which is unheard of in most music. So it's just it's so catchy. It's so stunning to hear it. Like, you know, when I remember hearing it as a kid on the radio and just being like, what is that? That's amazing. Yeah. And the song is great, and it's been parodied and covered. It's in I'm trying to remember what Will Ferrell movie it's in with the Dan Band covering it, right? Is it Wedding Crashers? Probably.
It might be.
It's not really a Will Ferrell movie, but he's in it for a minute.
Yeah.
And, you know, but yeah, it's in there. And Candy Shop, all kinds of stuff. So
it's definitely iconic, isn't it?
It's so iconic for the 80s. And you did a great job, man. And the band did a great job.
Thank you.
You also had a guest come in on the X Japan track. So of course I am a massive Yoshiki and X Japan fan. So I had to mention that. There's very few people. The word iconic is thrown around a lot, and obviously there's a laundry list of great names that you've covered on this album. But X Japan is like in the pinnacle of songwriting in the world, like really and truly. And I know I'm given to a little exaggeration as a writer and a journalist, but I have to give it up to you guys for first picking that song and then working with the guest there, Hideki.
X Japan's one of those bands that unless you've been to Japan or you've connected with Japan or you've had some sort of interest in Japanese culture, it's very unlikely you've heard of this band. And it's only been in sort of the recent sort of decade that X Japan started to, you know, make an effort to sort of get some Western recognition. I mean, they've had so much success in Japan that they haven't needed to do anything else and to try and get out of their own country. And so when I first discovered X Japan, I think our drummer at the time, TY, was absolutely obsessed. And so we used to go to his place, and he had what's it called? Is it The Art of Life? And we used to sit down there and just drink beers and just zone out and watch this amazing concert. And you know, selling out Tokyo Dome 4 nights in a row, like stuff like that. And they're the biggest band of all time from Japan. And so for us, we just gradually became more and more obsessed with this band and listening to their whole back catalogue. And one of the cool things about this band is that, and I think just listening to you sort of talk about it, you might know a little bit more about the band than even I do, but it's, you know, they kind of started out with a little bit of speed metal. Like they had this real cool speed metal sound. And then over the years, they've evolved and changed. They've tried pop, they've tried rock. They've just so many different genres and elements that they've thrown into their music and just redefined themselves and evolved over the years. And that's partially why, or probably a big part of why they're so successful in Japan alone. But Silent Jealousy, picking that song, it definitely leans into that early era of the band, that speed metal vibe. There's certainly sections in there. The arrangements are very, you get a real Blind Guardian vibe at times. It's very dramatic. It's very over the top. And it lent in at the time when we recorded it to what we were listening to and the type of like songs that we were writing at the time. Very fast, very energetic stuff, and very dramatic and epic in places as well. And we were obsessing over covering a song for ages. And then when we picked this song, Tim looks at the lyrics and goes, I can't speak Japanese to begin with. And I'm not even going to attempt to try and sing this in Japanese. And I also don't even understand what I'll be singing about. So it kind of doesn't feel right to do that. So luckily for us, we've had such a great career in Japan over the years. We've toured there multiple times for the past, it must be 20 years. Yeah, it have to be 20 years now. And a lot of friends, a lot of musicians over there. So we hit up one of our friends, Hideaki from Vigilante. It's a progressive metal band from Tokyo. And they're fantastic guys. We've known them for years. And Hideaki he said, yes, I'll sing this song. And so he went into a studio in Tokyo. He gave him all the tracks, and he went in there and smashed a vocal out, and it's pretty cool. And it's amazing. It still gets like a lot of love, especially from Japan. Like the Japanese just love the novelty of, you know, a Western band covering one of their greats. And I think the only criticism that we ever seem to get, because I'm always translating the Japanese comments on like our YouTube video for it, and I think they just say that piano at the start is a bit too slow, and the piano is completely artificial. It's just, we just whipped it up at the last minute. But I think if that's the only criticism that I can see, I mean, we've done pretty well. So yeah, we're stoked to include this in this compilation, in this album, because it brings back a lot of great memories for us of an amazing country.
Nice. You guys smashed it, and I hope you get back there as soon as possible. It's on my bucket list for travel, just in terms of my life. I need to get there someday, and sure. Just like the rest of the world, when things open up again and it's safe, which I hope is soon. But thank you for you blessed us with this awesome covers record. I still feel like Fallen Idols has a lot of legs. Like, it's still a very strong album. I went back and listened to it again this week, getting ready to talk to you. And yeah, it's still very strong. And I feel like it's a good sort of jumping off point to whatever's coming next. I imagine you guys have spent some time working on a follow-up, hopefully for some point in the future.
Yeah, after Fallen Idols came out, I think, well, it's usually a common theme with Tim and our band, because Tim records and produces everything. He's got his own studio, so we're so lucky. We've got everything internal. We've got all the skills and the capability to just continue to churn out music, which is great. But it's a common theme at the end of each album recording process that Tim, you know, borderline just wants to quit the band and just the whole thing implodes. He's just so mentally drained and exhausted and fed up with it that he doesn't want to listen to music ever again, especially, you know, his own music. And so after Fallen Idols came out, and it did really well. I mean, it was the best-selling album that we've ever done over the entire space of our career, which is just fantastic. We went out and did a little run of shows here in Australia, but then we all had plans to sort of kick it up a notch and continue to do the album cycle internationally in 2020. And obviously, you know, the bleeding obvious happened. And so with music, and I'm sure you see this all the time, like music, within months, within days and weeks, music becomes really old, or at least the perception is, because there's just so much new music coming out every Friday, the release radar for Spotify, you know, all that kind of stuff. And so it really forces you to have to be creative to try and keep this music fresh and exciting and motivate people to listen to something that's not today. It hasn't come out today. It's come out last week or last month or last year or whatever it might be. So I think part of some of our plans moving forward is, how can we continue to give Fallen Idols a little bit more life, because it didn't get the cycle that it really deserved. And we believe, like every band, like it's the strongest release to date, you know, but we're really proud of it. And we think that a lot more people need at least the opportunity to be able to discover it and listen to it, let alone, well, hopefully enjoy it as well. But in the background as well, we're also throwing ideas around for the next album. We've got a bunch of ideas. We've got an understanding of a kind of like a direction that we want to go with it. We haven't actually started recording anything or demoing anything at the moment. We've all got our own little ideas. And I think, like a lot of bands these days in sort of the digital age, we're all on like a group Slack chat. So we just got all of our channels and topics. And so we just, you know, dump little ideas and pieces of information in there. And yeah, we're excited. And I think especially with the covers album and what's been happening with the covers album and the attention that's been getting, the common sort of thing that we're talking about at the moment is, how do we keep the momentum going and follow up with the next original release and make sure that we can really sort of capitalize on all the attention that we've been getting from the covers album. So it's exciting. It's really fun for us at the moment. So we feel a little bit rejuvenated after the past year of unknowns. So very optimistic.
Awesome. And I hope it continues. You know, sometimes a cover or a unique viral thing like a post or a video can kind of, you know, break you out and get you to a wider audience. But ultimately, you want to be known for your own music. But still, the covers are awesome, and you did a great job with that. And I agree. I feel like the album, the prior album, still has legs and life, and hopefully you'll get to at least tour somewhat when things open up again on your way to a new record. Don't give up. and keep fighting, keep that spirit alive. And you know what
Will
I
do.
think fans don't appreciate, maybe, or they don't appreciate it as much as, like you were saying about your singer. You live with the music for a long time, the creative process, being in a band, hashing it out, agreeing on what a song is, agreeing on many songs, going into the studio, cutting the tracks, mix, master. You have heard this thing over and over again. The thing you haven't done is heard it usually or rarely in front of people and their reaction. Then it becomes
Yeah,
kind of a new song again in your ears,
it
because
does.
you're hearing it with the and all the backup, people singing in the audience or screaming, or, oh, this is the part where they mosh. Here's the breakdown, like, cool stuff like that, where, it gets like a little bit of a new life for you. And you really haven't had much of that, based on when the record came out and what happened after. So, maybe that's what'll happen. Obviously, you're in a good frame of mind for it. And, I'm sure, I feel like, don't you feel like the first shows back on a regular basis are going to be just ape shit? They're going to be bananas. It's going to be psycho. People are going to be, you're probably overdoing it. Everybody drink responsibly. I know I shouldn't say that because I sound like a grandpa, but drink responsibly. Give your keys up to someone else. Take a cab home or whatever. Pick somebody up if they fall down. That's a given. But like, yeah, I feel like we're going to be like barbarians, man. It's going to be nuts.
Well, so it's Friday morning here in Sydney, and tonight I'm going to my first gig, well, since the pandemic hit, where we can stand up again. So I've been to a couple of shows here and there, and we've sat down, and it's been okay. It's nice just to be in the room with like-minded people and see some music. But tonight is going to be the first where I can stand up and move around. I can hold a beer and have a good time. And so I'll try to drink responsibly, Keith. I can't promise anything, but I am excited, and I think that from a musician point of view is really exciting because, as I said earlier, we're on the verge of something like a new chapter of music, I think. And I think people, because it's been taken away from them, I don't think people are going to take it for granted like they used to, at least in the short term. And so I think over the next few years, as things start to go back to, well, whatever the new normal is going to be, I think people are going to make the effort to get off the couch and go and see a band, support their local scene, and make more of an effort to attend those tours when they roll through town as well. And so I think bands just need to stay patient and persevere, because I think we're about to hit another real important and probably a real exciting time for music globally. So fingers crossed. That's me, glass half full anyway.
I like it. I like the optimism. And of course, I mean, just get home safe. Drink all you want. Just get home safe. Like drink however much you can handle.
Absolutely.
But just get home safely. And
will do.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad earlier you mentioned Slack, and I know you're fond of technology. And it's really interesting to me how, like, in a way, some of these things like social media, not the best thing for you all the time. I work in marketing and music marketing and social media and corporate digital marketing, and you're very familiar with all the tools and the things as you promote the band, do your own endeavors. But it's cool how, like, a technology like Slack, like Zoom, we can time travel with Zoom.
Yeah.
We can communicate and share files over Dropbox or some other thing. And it's really, I think, like, fortunate if this terrible stuff had to happen at this time of the world. Imagine how much worse it would be without all these conveniences.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's saved them, whether it be just personally for their own sanity or for their profession, just connectivity, just making sure that we can keep in some form of contact with each other. And I think for artists, I've seen some amazing creativity over the past 12 months where artists have just sort of looked around them and just said, what can I do with what I've got? I can't do the normal things anymore, but that doesn't mean that I sit and wallow, which would be perfectly fine because it's a really challenging time. But a lot of people going, okay, well, what can I do to make the most of the situation? And we've seen some amazing things, just even from a streaming perspective, it's been incredible, but people have really sort of made the effort to go, we may not get a period of time like this ever again, where the pressure's off in some ways. Obviously, there's pressure in other elements of our lives, but we're not out there competing on the road. We're not trying to compete, in public for attention. We can sit at home without the obligations of logistics and money and travel and all that sort of stuff, and we can spend more time cleaning up the back end. We can spend more time, recording or writing or just interacting with our community and being more engaging and learning what other people are doing and paying more attention. So I think it's been really exciting to see how some artists have really taken this period of time as an opportunity and just continued to push forward. And I think as a result, that's helped lift a lot of other people up who have really struggled during this time, because they can see that people are taking a more of a positive direction and approach with what they're doing. So yeah, I'd hate to think what it'd be like if we didn't have this connectivity and this technology. I won't even bother thinking about it.
Indeed. I definitely don't want to lose the opportunity to talk to you about your podcast, the Amazing Indie Social Podcast. I'm a big fan. Right when you came onto my radar, or I came onto your radar, you had, I think, already started, but I'm super impressed with you. As a person who has interviewed thousands of people, you are really comfortable and natural at doing this. And so I wanted to ask about, just how you prepare for a guest. You've had some incredible guests. I mentioned off camera here, you talk to underground artists, you talk to some of the biggest artists in the world. And it's like every single episode is like a chat with your friends and not an inquisition, which is more like my style, unfortunately. But I wanted to ask about how you prepare and how do you find that comfort zone, or is it just something you're really naturally great at?
Well, thank you. I might have to clip this little part and use it as a testimonial later on. So I appreciate the kind words. It's good.
From the heart.
Yeah, thank you. And oh man, I mean, it's such a wild thing, this podcast stuff. And I know that every man and their dog, so to speak, has got a podcast these days. And they're everywhere. But I can't understate how important and how life-changing a podcast can be. Even just people that are discovering for the first time and listening, but having one yourself and just getting into the habit of talking to people. And from a prep point of view, I tend to look, if it's a friend of mine that I've known for a long time, I might just make a couple of notes of like topics or stories that we can talk about, just to get something going, a good vibe going. But usually what I'll do is I've got a little notebook and I'll just write down, like I'll physically write it out. I don't have sort of stuff online because I get more out of physically writing things down, retain it better. And I'll put basic information, very obvious stuff that becomes anchors. And then I'll just write down just key points. But I always put sort of this hat on where I'm thinking, like, for me, I'm pretending that I'm meeting this person for the first time and I don't even know that they play in a band. Like, it's sort of like when you go to a family gathering and your auntie or your grandmother or whoever starts asking you really odd questions because they don't know anything about what you do, and they get a couple of bits and pieces, but they don't really connect the dots. So I try to take a different angle with them and just ask them really not odd, but just different questions, because especially for artists and musicians, we're so used to doing interviews all the time, and that's for the most part the same questions over and over again. It's like, oh, tell us about the album, tell us about the tour, blah blah blah, and they're fine. There's nothing wrong with talking about that stuff. But I think when people are doing press runs, after the 20th or the 200th interview, they just zone out. They're in autopilot. And for me, it's like, how do I talk to them like I was sitting in a bar with them and just talking a bit of shit and having some fun, and making them feel, good and getting to talk about themselves in a new and fresh way. So, and I think that the thing that's been an advantage to me over the years is that because I have been on the other side of the fence as a musician, I learned really quickly years ago when we would play with international artists, with larger bands, touring bands, that you couldn't afford to be the psychotic fan or anymore. You couldn't do it because you're now their peer and you're working with them, and it's a bit of a business, and so your reputation is really important. So you need to talk to them like they're human beings and not some sort of crazy fan obsessed sort of thing and start rattling off all these weird and wonderful facts and things and making them answer questions and just putting them on the spot and being a punisher. You really have to sort of be reserved and just talk to people like they're normal people. And that has helped me when I eventually did the podcast to remember to continue that sort of process with people. And eventually when people let their guard down and they know that they can speak freely and just act normally like they're talking to a friend, you tend to get all the juicy stuff. You tend to get all the fun stuff as well, but you just don't, it's like anything. You don't want to rush too quickly into a relationship. You've got to ease in. So for me, it's always the case. And that's why long form works as well. Rather than just quick bang, snap little, 5-minute interviews here and there. Having a long form conversation, it gives people time to sort of break the ice and, you know, calmly sort of find their feet and open up and then start to get into a really good conversation. So I'm glad that that translates well. And just hearing you sort of say that, just it makes me feel good, because it sort of is the whole reason why I do it. And so the whole purpose of sort of doing these conversations is to have that sort of perception where people can just listen in, like it's a couple of people, you know, just catching up for after a long time.
Awesome. I have definitely been guilty on rare occasions of fanboying out a little bit.
Oh,
There's a
me
handful.
too.
There's a
Me too.
handful. I was gonna. I haven't heard you do any, but was there one or two where you just somebody is built up in your mind so much that you were in awe of them even as you were interviewing them? It's happened to me. So
I definitely had moments where it's like I'm sitting there and they're talking to me and I zone out and I'm just looking at their face and their mouth moving, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, what right do I have sitting here with my little old radio show, having a chat to this person who's this icon? And so all that's going through my head while this person's talking. And then I'm always quick to go, oh, please catch what they're saying, so I can just continue the conversation instead of being like the deer in headlights going, you know. But yeah, there's certainly been moments like that. Luckily, I think I've more or less stayed somewhat reserved. I'm sure there's a few, when people listen back, you'll probably hear the excitement in my voice. Sometimes I'll get a little bit more charged up. But I think pre-podcast stuff, I mean, I was always like that. I was a kid that I would camp out at the venues at like from lunchtime and want to be first in the door, first to the barrier. You know, before digital cameras, I had the old disposable cameras and, you know, hiding them in my pockets or whatever, so I don't get caught by security trying to take photos. I'm the ones, like, I'm the kid that's around the back at the loading dock trying to catch a glimpse of the guys coming in, trying to get photos with them, trying to get stuff signed. So I've been that, and I still have elements of that. I try to ease into it before I get too crazy these days. But I totally get why people are like that, because music's a powerful thing, man. Like, as you know, like it's a soundtrack. It's to people's lives. It marks defining moments in our lives. It hits us to the core. It's incredible stuff. And so I totally get when people just go a little bit cray cray, and it's perfectly understandable.
In my defense, and lucky for me, the one time I was probably really nervous and bad was Mike Muir of Suicidal Tendencies.
Yeah, wow.
And which is probably why I'm remembering it, because I have the hat on. And he totally busted on me and broke the ice and was hilarious and great, and forgave me right away. We got it out of the way right away. And we made jokes the whole time. And after about the first few minutes, it was awesome. But the first few minutes, I was like, and I had been doing this a while already when I interviewed him. And I was just like, whoa, why? I can't believe this.
And I think that's a really good point as well, just that you made. And I haven't really thought about it this way, but I wouldn't say it's a responsibility, but I think just from a musician point of view, and I've got a lot of musician mates that do the press runs, they do all the interviews and all that sort of stuff. And I think for me, taking on the role as the person being interviewed, I think part of my responsibility is to help break the ice as well. You know, not put all the pressure on the person conducting the interview. You know, I need to do things to try and get the rapport going and get that momentum going back and forth. It's a two-way street. You know, we're having a conversation. It's not just this robotic sort of stale stock standard sort of format where you just fire a question at me and then I just blankly give you an answer, then we move to the next thing. It's a back and forth, and so it goes both ways. So I think I might have to just take that thought away and see what I can do just to inspire some of my fellow friends in bands and go, hey, here's how you can get a good interview, and it's not just about the other person, it's about you, and you can certainly do a lot. So thanks for planting those seeds.
Yeah, hey, this would be a good topic for a podcast and or a video guide.
Very true.
I want to give you back the rest of your day. I have one last question for you. I like to end some of these with a wild card question, because why not? It's fun. And so this is always fun. I have a handful of these. And the one I picked for you is, I like to call it day job for a cowboy, which is not that clever, but it works. And it's, what is the worst day job out, obviously outside of being a musician, what is the worst Joe job, everyday job you have ever had?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow, I've certainly had some interesting jobs over the years. Okay. Well, I guess worst can be defined by a number of different ways, but I think in this case, as far as how hard this job was for me, I'll definitely class this as the worst from a challenge perspective. But I used to paint tennis courts when I was just coming out of just in my late teens. And here in Australia in the summer, middle of summer, just so hot, and it's like similar to California, in summer. And we would have to get out at 3:30, 4 a.m. in the morning to start painting, so that we would stop before the sun really came out around 10 a.m. or whatever it might be. And that was back-breaking work. And sometimes we would have to go out there in the middle of the heat and do finishing touches and things like that. And that was really hard. And I think that same job that I did, we also laid out synthetic grass in playgrounds and schools and things like that. And man, I'm such a weakling. I suck. I suck at anything manual labor. I'm just horrible. And so this was just the worst combination of somebody who's inherently lazy physically, can hardly get the motivation to get up and do anything remotely physical, and then doing this very strenuous job as well. So the worlds certainly clashed. I didn't last. I think I did it for about 6 months, which is quite remarkable given what I know about myself. But that would probably be the worst job that I've had. But I've had quite a few doozies for different reasons. That's for sure.
Fair enough. This is why we make music.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And other things. Andy Dowling of Lord and the Andy Social Podcast. It has been honestly a treat to hang out with you and get to hear your story and have some laughs. I really appreciate you, man. I'm a fan, as well as interested in your career. Continued safety, health, and good luck. Have a good time tonight. And don't listen to me. Don't drink responsibly. Just get home safe. I mean, get home safe and drink all you want. But you know what I mean.
Sounds good. Absolutely.